The Hog Sty is brought to you by TicketClub.com, your one-stop shop for live events nationwide. Whether you're looking for game, theater, or live performance tickets, don't sweat it. TicketClub.com has you covered. So make sure you're going there for all your live entertainment needs, and make sure you're clicking over to them from the banner at the top of thehogsty.com.
Welcome back to another fun week of football here on the Hog Sty. Today, we have one of my favorite reoccurring guests we get on the show every year, and I think we've probably had you on now 3 or 4 times. It's going to be Steve Shoup, co-creator of Fanspeak. If you are a football fan, you know Fanspeak because you've probably done about a dozen mock drafts already, if you're a slacker. But Steve created the site with his sister Megan, and we've had him on before to kind of just talk about the NFL draft and some of the prospects coming up. And so, Steve, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me on, guys.
Glad to have you on, Steve. So I want to ask you one thing right up front about your site, because I've been using it for, 5-6 years now. I don't know. When did you guys create it?
I believe 2013.
Okay.
First draft.
So about 6 years. Who gets to approve all the people who create big boards? Because I know you create a big board for that site, and you update it regularly.
The list gets longer and longer every year.
Yeah, the list keeps growing every year. There's probably 20 or so guys on there now. But who comes up with these? Because I saw one from a guy named Cheesehead TV, and I can't imagine Cheesehead TV who that guy is.
That's a guy, Russ Uglum. He's a big Green Bay Packers blogger, and I've gotten to know him over the years. And he writes for a couple different sites and does a couple of things. Cheesehead TV is their his main outlet, though.
Gotcha. I didn't associate it with the Packers. I just thought it was a guy with a weird website.
Steve, it's Steve Thomas here. So your co-named brother. Obviously the most popular feature of your site is the on the clock, mock draft, which is what we all do over and over and over again. And Alex is up to draft probably 100 at this point, I'd say.
Maybe.
What is the difference in the algorithm between classic and difficult mode? I've always wanted to ask you this, and I always forget.
There's a couple things. If it's part of the premium subscription, there is some difference in the trade algorithm as well. If it's part of just the general, a lot of it is how much guys will slide or rise. Classic is a little looser, and I kind of like it that way because, I do feel that the draft has surprises every year. I mean, we see it every year. Obviously, the Redskins' perfect example, Jonathan Allen, a couple years ago, and people told me, there's just no way Jonathan Allen's getting out of the top 10. No way he's getting out of the top 10. Redskins take him 17. So Darius Geis, perfect example last year. I mean, I remember people saying that he's going top 20, and the Redskins get him in the late 50s. So, Classic allows a little bit more slide and leeway. Difficult's gonna not let guys slide so much. So to try and keep it a bit more tighter to the current board that you're using.
Well, we love it. Yeah, and it's our favorite here. So let's start off here, and let's start talking to prospects. To me, the number one thing on the Redskins board, and we know you're a Redskins fan, so we hope you don't mind that we're just going to focus on the Redskins. Obviously, I think the number one need on the Redskins' mind should be quarterback, and there's a bunch of quarterback prospects. You have Kyler Murray and Dwayne Haskins at the top of the board. So let's start there. Are one of these two guys going to be available to the Redskins at 15, and what do you think of them as prospects?
Well, I think it's really tough. I view there as 3 first-round talented quarterbacks, and that's Haskins, Murray, and then Drew Lock. History suggests that a quarterback will not be there at 15. I mean, even in what are considered down quarterback years, 2 years ago, for instance, when it was Mitch Trubisky, Patrick Mahomes, and Deshaun Watson, obviously that draft looks a lot better as a quarterback draft now than it did then. But there wasn't the hype. You knew Myles Garrett was going number 1. Francisco at number 2. They ended up trading with the Bears. So there didn't seem to be like the big push for quarterbacks, and that's kind of the feeling you get with this draft. Yet all 3 of those guys were in the top 12 because the Chiefs and the Texans traded up to 10 and 12 to get Mahomes and Watson. So to suggest that one of these guys will slide to 15 even in a year where there's not the hype. I mean, of the top 5 teams, there's only the Arizona situation if they do take Kyler Murray, which is very odd considering Josh Rosen being drafted in the first round a year ago. And then, of course, maybe the Raiders. But with the Raiders' moves this offseason, trading for Antonio Brown, signing Trent Brown, signing Tyrell Williams, it doesn't seem like they want to break in a rookie quarterback. I mean, I think they want to kind of start competing. And so outside of that, you are looking at few teams before the Redskins that really need a quarterback. Giants being number 1, Bengals, maybe Dolphins, but Dolphins seem to be kind of, for lack of a better term, tanking for next season and getting to the top of that quarterback class. So there is a chance, I'd say, that one of these quarterbacks up to 15, probably most likely Drew Lock of the 3. As for Haskins and Murray, I think it's more likely they get drafted earlier or somebody trades up for them who's behind the Redskins. And you do have a lot of teams behind the Redskins who have aging quarterbacks. If one of these guys starts sliding, maybe the Steelers say, hey, we already lost Bell, we already lost Brown. We tried these like 3rd, 4th round quarterbacks in Josh Dobbs and Mason Rudolph, but we need the heir apparent to Ben Roethlisberger. This, our run has pretty much peaked. Maybe they trade up for one of them. Maybe the Chargers trade up. So I think there's a lot of interesting situations there. As for actually looking at these quarterbacks, I'm a big Dwayne Haskins fan. I think he's the top quarterback in this class. I think Murray is close from his upside, but I do, there are some size concerns. There are some concerns of,
personality. Is that what you're trying to say?
Personality, slightly, and I also have some concerns of, and don't get me wrong, I was a big Baker Mayfield fan, but, the thing when you look at Oklahoma, and we saw this from a running back perspective with P. Ryan, is Oklahoma is just so far better than the rest of their conference. Like, the only good defense in the Big 12 is Oklahoma. So, Kyler Murray, he crushed it. He had a fantastic year, but I really think Haskins has just the bigger, wider range skill set. I think there's a better chance that Haskins ends up a top 10 quarterback than Murray is the best way I would put it. And but I like both, and I do like Drew Lock as well. I think he's probably more like a second-tier quarterback, but he can be a fine starting quarterback for a number of years in this league. And as we've seen, like that's really what you need. Obviously, you want the elite guys, but you just need a good, capable starter to contend in this league. If you don't have one, then you're in trouble.
So I agree with the sense that you pointed out that sometimes QBs, it's kind of hard to make it 215 in general, given the sense that sometimes people feel like, they sense that there is a need and they may have to trade up and get in front of some teams. I do have a question in terms of outside of Murray and Haskins, we assume, just for the sake of this question, we assume that they're probably going to go before 15. Who do you not want, who do you not want the Redskins to overdraft or reach on at the quarterback position? Say we do make it to 15, and then your preferred quarterbacks are not there, or the people that you feel are first round talents. Because, and truth be told, people get drafted all the time, overdrafted all the time, because of the sake of desperation. And for the sake of the Redskins, we obviously do not want that to happen. But who are some quarterbacks, or maybe that one quarterback that you're like, okay, this could have happened in the 2nd or 3rd round?
Yeah, the guy I'm really not high on, and even if it was the Redskins' 2nd round pick, would be Daniel Jones. I saw him up close down at the Senior Bowl, and I was just not impressed. And it was very easy to see him taking reps right behind Drew Lock. So it was easy to compare those two. And also you had other, solid quarterback prospects down there: Tyree Jackson, Jared Stidham, Will Grier, Ryan Finley. I think all those guys are the next tier down. But Daniel Jones, it just didn't seem that to be there with him. He lacked velocity on his throws. He's indecisive, and that cost him. And, in the game he made a few big plays, but he had some bad plays also. But just day in, day out of practice, he's very unimpressive. And his college stats really were nothing impressive. And, it's not like, say, Drew Lock, who faced SEC competition throughout his career. Daniel Jones is playing in the ACC, which Clemson is obviously an elite team, but outside of that, the ACC has been kind of down these last couple of years. Florida State really struggling, and nobody else kind of taking that next step to be the second-tier team. Daniel Jones is a guy I think he's a different quarterback than Paxton Lynch, but I think that's what you're kind of looking at. Like, odds are much higher for bust with a guy like Daniel Jones. He might be a guy who makes it as a backup. I do think he's probably more better suited for that than, say, Paxton Lynch. I think he's got a better floor, but I think a top 50 pick is kind of wasted on him, in my opinion.
Let's go back to Drew Lock here real quick. I've watched a lot of Drew Lock film, and he's got this huge arm, NFL elite level arm, I think. But what makes me nervous about him is that he has a lot of inconsistent moments, and he has a lot of throws that you just kind of scratch your head at. And I realize that he has receivers that drop a ton of balls on him. But what I wonder about Drew Lock is, but for the fact that quarterbacks kind of get overdrafted, I wonder if he's really a first-round talent. Tell me I'm wrong. Convince me. A lot of people try to convince me I'm wrong about Locke, so convince me I'm wrong.
Yeah, there are definitely some blemishes with Locke, and he's not nearly as refined as a quarterback as you'd want, considering unlike guys like Haskins and Murray, he has started multiple years, and he has a number of starts in his career. The thing I'll say about Locke, and what I really took away from the Senior Bowl practices, is obviously the just raw arm talent is there, and his footwork can be a mess. I think he tries to throw with too much anticipation. Obviously, you want a quarterback to throw with anticipation. I mean, that's what separates the great quarterbacks and the good quarterbacks from the average and the bad quarterbacks. And if you can throw with anticipation and put it in those tight windows, and I went back and watched some of his tape, and I saw some of the same things where he just tries to lead receivers a bit too much, or he maybe expects them to break it in a certain way, and they don't. And, I don't know how much of that is being in the meetings, they're just not on the same page, or he just assumes that a receiver is going to do a certain thing. What I like with that is that he's trying to throw with anticipation. To me, that's the exact opposite of Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones needs to see it to hit it. Like, if it's not there, he doesn't throw it, or he underthrows it, which can easily turn into an interception just as well. So, I think with Drew Lock, I see him as a guy who is very moldable with coaching. I think coaches will like him attempting to throw with anticipation, throw it into the tight window. He's not 100% there, and there's going to be some growing pains. That's absolutely for sure, and that's a concern, because you expect early results for these quarterbacks, but we've also seen some of these quarterbacks like Jared Goff, like a Mitch Trubisky, just have awful rookie years, and then year two comes around and they have their teams in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, I think we've seen that smart coaching and smart offenses can get the most out of these quarterbacks. And, say what you will about Jay Gruden, he's viewed around the league as a QB guru, a guy who gets the most out of his quarterbacks, who can adapt to his quarterback, who can do, and who he's got a lot of good concepts. And, people say, oh, it was McVay, it was Sean McVay. Sure, Sean McVay helped, but I think the same thing is true. It's just we've seen the last couple of years the deterioration of offensive skill players around the quarterback position, and obviously the injuries that have really taken their toll on this Redskins offense.
Hey, so I want to move on from quarterbacks if we can. And the big name that came out of the scouting combine, Steve, was Metcalf. And he just wowed everybody with his numbers. But it's the kind of prospect that you see the raw stats, you look at him, and you think this could be a number one talent. But then there's a bunch of red flags, too, at the same time with he never ran a full route tree and things like that. What do you make of Metcalf?
I think Metcalf has a chance to be a phenomenal talent, and athletically he's as gifted as a Julio Jones.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if he's there to produce like Julio. And obviously I think and this is taking nothing away from Julio Jones, but he went to a perfect situation. I mean, Matt Ryan was already established, had already been there a couple of years. They had Roddy White opposite him, so he wasn't even taking number one coverage early in his career. They just allowed him to develop. And his first 2 seasons, he put up good numbers, but a lot of it was just go deep. I'm just going to hit you deep and big splash plays and things like that.
He didn't have to worry about everything else. Yeah.
Exactly. And they just progressively grew him as a player and a receiver. And honestly, that's what we see with most receiving receivers and receiving talents. I mean, the 2014 receiver draft is kind of like that 83 quarterback draft where it's just going to be iconic. I mean, these guys hit the ground and they hit the ground running and just elite talents. And Mike Evans has 1,000 yards every year, and people don't even talk about him the same way they talked about Odell Beckham. And of course, Brandon Cooks has now been at 3 different teams, and obviously he's had good quarterback play at all 3 teams. But he's been impressive everywhere he's been, and it's rare for receivers to develop that way. And we see it. We see the slow development. I mean, you look since that 2014 draft, and this would be my biggest argument against Metcalf is who's the best receiver, first-round receiver, since that 2014 draft? I mean, Amari Cooper, I guess. I mean, Will Fuller would probably be number 2. Those aren't exactly guys that are making you think that your offense is just going to hum and just be able to throw on anybody. They're fine players, they're good players, but a lot of bust in that mix. I mean, guys like Rashard Perryman, obviously Treadwell, Josh Doxson. I wouldn't put him fully in the bust category. Obviously, he's not as bad as Corey Coleman, who went 6-7 picks ahead of him. But a lot of misses, and even guys like last year. DJ Moore was solid in Carolina, Calvin Ridley solid in Atlanta, but again, they didn't have to come in and be like that number one weapon, that top guy, and Carolina was very slow to introduce DJ Moore, and when they did, he produced. But I think what it boils down to for me, for Metcalf, you're a team who has a top 5, top 10, top 15 pick. What's the return on investment? It's probably going to take a couple years because he's not nearly as refined as you'd want him to be. And if you're a team without another, say, number one receiver opposite him, I don't know if he's going to be able to handle some of the top corners in the league. Is he going to match up versus Patrick Peterson? Is he going to match up versus Chris Harris and some of these other top elite corners and win enough against them? And that's what the great receivers do. I think you'd have to be prepared for a slower return on investment, like I said. And there are some situations that would be better if, say, the Colts traded up for him or somebody like that who had a receiver opposite him and a quality quarterback to give him. But I would just be a little risk adverse, especially if we're talking the Redskins standpoint of what they'd get back from this guy in his first couple of years.
Well, then let's talk. The Redskins definitely need a big X-style number one receiver, and I get what you're saying about Metcalf for sure. He has some parts that scares me. A guy like N'Keal Harry out of Arizona State, he's less of a wow guy in terms of his numbers, but I think he's more developed as a receiver. I don't know if he's necessarily a pick for 15. But is N'Keal Harry a decent prospect for the Redskins? And if not him, then who in the second round, that would maybe fill the X-type role? Because we've got Paul Richardson as a Z. We don't, the Redskins just lost Jameson Crowder and have got Trey Quinn, as the Mr. Irrelevant. So they need a slot guy and an X guy. So let's talk about Harry and then some other prospects.
I think there's a couple guys that could be in that second round range, and I agree with you. They could use that 6'2", 6'3", guy who's just obviously an X receiver. But I would put at it that the Redskins I'm not in a position to be too choosy about what receivers are there. And I would just take the best guys available, but I would look towards the second round. And, I like Harry, and I think he could sneak into the end of round 1. But, yeah, I don't think he's an option at 15. And he could be available in the second round because there's just so many guys there. I think with the way this receiver draft class is, I think you have Metcalf at the top, and then you have this big gap of, like, second and third round talented receivers of, 10, 12 guys. So, how those dominoes fall, 1 or 2 might end up in the end of round 1 to go with Metcalf, but the rest are second, third round guys. So I think you got to go with N'Keal Harry. I'm a big believer in guys like Hakeem Butler and Calvin Harmon.
Yeah.
But a guy who I think can do it all would be like Deebo Samuel from South Carolina. He could play the slot. He could be your outside receiver. Like you said, the Redskins just do not have receiver talent right now. So I just don't think they can be picky. They just need a guy who can make plays. And I don't care, if he's lining up, and I don't care if he eventually beats out Paul Richardson for the wide position. There's no guarantee Richardson's going to be the answer long term out there. So, so I think there's a lot of guys in that kind of range. I mean, Paris Campbell gets a lot of hype. I mean, he's a playmaker, obviously. I think there's a lot of talent in this second and third round tier of receivers that I really like, and I think the Redskins should utilize at least one of those picks, if not 2. Probably won't, since there's so many other needs, but they really need to address this position. It's easily one of the weakest receiving cores in the league right now, and there's not a lot of hope that these guys are going to develop and be better than what they are.
I think you might even be generous by saying one of the weakest.
Yeah. One of is saying a lot that maybe they don't deserve.
Yeah, they probably are the weakest right now, because some of the other teams who were very good, like the Jets signed Jamison Crowder, the Bills signed John Brown and Cole Beasley. So right now, as it seems, they probably are the weakest receiving core.
I think so. Let's move on to another guy from the scouting combine who didn't show up. This guy, I kind of, for our site, Steve kind of assigned me to watch edge rushers, and I fell in love with Jalen Ferguson when I was watching some of his tape, and then he didn't even get invited to the combine, or he got uninvited. How much do you think that hurts a guy's draft stock? Because I look at that guy as a probably late first rounder, second rounder, easily could be a 10-plus sack a season player. Like, he's got amazing speed. But if you get uninvited to the combine for some kind of off-the-field issue, do you think that's a big red flag for teams?
I think it obviously depends on the issue. And so that can be a factor and will force teams to investigate you a little bit more. And look, teams have to be risk adverse. I mean, they see it. Even star players look at the Kansas City Chiefs. What happened with Kareem Hunt, and now Tyreek Hill is going through the same sort of thing. So, Reuben Foster from the 49ers, that situation, and the 49ers just felt they had to cut bait, and teams have to be risk adverse. So I think it can hurt from a draft stock perspective, but we still see these guys end up being drafted. Joe Mixon being another example. As for Ferguson, what is troubling, though, is at his workout, his numbers were not good. They're very unimpressive. And I agree with you on tape, at the Senior Bowl, he showed, really good speed off the edge. And doesn't have many other tools, I feel like, and that kind of got exposed at the Senior Bowl, so that kind of dropped me more to like a second round, later second round grade on him, because I think right now he is just that speed, initial quickness. If he wins there, he can get to the quarterback. If not, he's probably not going to do much. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's kind of expected. He was from, not a top-tier conference, and, was able just to win from his natural gifts. But what is concerning was his workout numbers. I don't know if he's going to schedule a workout again or just try and work out for a bunch of teams, but not just like from a 40-time perspective, but his three-cone numbers were bad, and he reportedly slipped like 7 times trying to do the three-cone drill. So
Wow.
it was just not good. And three-cone is probably one of the biggest key drills, workout drills, in determining quality edge rushers. You really want that time because you need to get around the edge. I mean, that's
Sure.
your thing. And when you have these guys like Trent Williams and Tyron Smith and these great left tackles and even high quality right tackles, they're quick. They might be big, but they're quick and they can get out there, and you need to bend around them and make tight cuts and things like that. And that was a bad workout for him. So I haven't seen if he's going to do anything to try and down from that. But that is questioning. I do like him on tape, and I thought he's a talented guy and can definitely, like I said, be that like second, or maybe if he slides a little bit third round option that gives you some speed off the edge and can come in on passing downs probably as a rookie and maybe even year 2, and then hopefully fully develop into a more well-rounded player who can just be your every down guy.
Yeah.
So I have a question about guards. At 15, you can't trade up, you can't trade back. You have the option at 15, or you have a mid-round option. And what I'm asking you is, does it make sense in any scenario that you can imagine to draft an offensive lineman? I'll just leave it at that. Offensive lineman, we know the Redskins need interior line help. But does it make any sense for the Redskins to draft an offensive lineman at 15? And the second part of that question is, if not, is the better option a mid-round pick for the Redskins at that specific position group?
Yeah, I'm a big fan in building the offensive line, especially from where the Redskins standpoint is obviously Redskins have hope right now. They got to run the football effectively, and when they're winning early in the year last year, it wasn't through the air. It wasn't Alex Smith playing well. It was Adrian Peterson playing well, and it was the defense playing well, and the Redskins getting leads and holding on to leads. So I think with Geis and Peterson, that needs to be their game plan again. So building the offensive line, and then on the flip side, if you are introducing a young quarterback either this year or next, which I think we all agree they're going to have to, having a good offensive line is a young quarterback's best friend. So saying that, though, I think that this is one of the deepest areas in this draft is the offensive line, and I think just from a positional standpoint, you don't see many interior offensive line go top 15, top 20 even. There will probably be a couple taken in the first round, but I think it's a very deep draft, and I think you could find plenty of talented guys in the second and third rounds that can start right away. And, we typically see that. We see a lot of third, fourth round, especially interior offensive linemen, but any offensive lineman will start as rookies. Orlando Brown and Mason Cole come to mind from last year. There's just always a couple guys who can hit the ground running as rookies because the positions can get overlooked somewhat. And I think this year is extremely deep in that area. I think you got a couple guys from Wisconsin who look really good, who could be like third-round picks. I think Chris Lindstrom from Boston College is one of my favorite guys. He might be second round, maybe with the third-round pick. Guys like Eric McCoy or Eldon Jenkins, both primarily known as centers, but they could play guard, or if maybe you feel they're better at center, Rouillet could play guard as well. So it gives you a couple of different options, and there's more beyond that. Connor McGovern from Penn State's another guy that comes to mind. Michael Jordan from Ohio State is another guy who could be in that third-round mix. So I think there's a lot of depth there. I feel like you're going to find talented guys who can start day one. And, yeah, they might not be all-pro offensive linemen, but they could be, 8-10-year starters for you. So I'd say wait on the position. Now, if it's a scenario where the Redskins maybe trade back in round one, say all the quarterbacks, all the edges that they want are gone, maybe they trade back. Maybe there is a guy there at the end of round one that would make sense. But just at 15, I think that's a little high in terms of what you'd be giving up from what else is out there, whether it's an inside linebacker, whether it's a corner, and preparing for the release of Josh Norman down the road, or whenever that may be. So I'd just say there's too much talent probably sitting there at 15, and I'd wait till the second or third round to address the position.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and first of all, I mean, the bar to get over Sean LaValle and a bunch of scrubs isn't very high. It's almost hard not to improve on that. But I wanted to real quick hit you with safeties. I took a look at safeties last week, so I have them on the brain. And the Redskins value versatile safeties. I understand that, but they've signed a guy in Landon Collins who, while he is versatile and he's clearly the best one on the roster, he's sort of more known as an in-the-box safety in, a cover three situation. So in terms of the safeties, a guy like Deontay Thompson from Alabama, I would assume is near the top of the Redskins board because he's from Alabama. But there's also a bunch of other rangy free safety type prospects. Juan Thornhill, Darnell Savage from Maryland. Talk to us a little bit about the safety group that you think may be a good fit for the Redskins.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. The Redskins have traditionally gone for those more interchangeable safeties, but Collins, he's at his best in the box. He's at his best making plays up there. It doesn't mean he can't cover at all, but just trying to play him out of position just doesn't make sense. And this is something the Redskins haven't always done well, is putting their best guys in their best position. But they've been better at it lately. So I have faith that they'll use Collins correctly. But that does mean they need that true free safety, that guy who can go sideline to sideline, and really focus on the cover aspect and not necessarily need to be the thumper to come in for run support. And I think you named two quality ones to be in that mid-round mix. Savage from Maryland and Thornhill, both local guys. Savage is just amazingly athletically gifted. I think Thornhill is the better cover guy of the two. I think there are some other options as well. I think Nasir Adderley from Delaware definitely fits that bill. I really like him. He impressed me a lot when I watched him, and I thought he held up fairly well at the Senior Bowl as well. And he's got even corner experience. Another guy I'd point to would be Tonty Gardner-Johnson. I'm not as high on him as some. I've seen some people push him into, top 40 pick type area, maybe late first round. I think he's more like a late second, early third. But he's a guy who's, athletic, got good frame, long, can make plays, pretty rangy. I think there are good options for that. The way I look at the safety class, I don't know if there's anyone of what I'd say all-pro talent, kind of like there was last year with, the Derwin James and Mika Fitzpatrick types. I think there are a lot of solid starting types, and these are the guys, some of the guys we named, and there's a few others who could jump in there as well. But I think the Redskins will have options, and what it ends up coming down to is you kind of only have four essentially premium picks to get starters, your first, your second, your two-thirds. Right now, obviously, you could make some trades and acquire another one or two, but they need to just see where they want to devote those picks. And safety is a need. I don't have a lot of faith in Monte Nicholson. He had a good quality rookie year, but was banged up, and last year was a mess and then banged some off-field issues. So, I think targeting one of these guys in the second or third also makes sense, but we've now mentioned like 5 positions where they could go with those picks. So it's going to be interesting to see where they end up targeting that position versus the edge versus the guard versus wide receiver.
Well, when you have that many needs, it helps, right? you can pretty much go best player, and you'll need that player.
And that is true. Like you don't get forced into reaching, and that's why the absolute worst thing would be them reaching for a quarterback at 15 or even in the second round to draft somebody when it's not going to pay off for you.
Yeah, because Lord knows the Redskins haven't reached for quarterbacks, in their past.
My goodness.
But I want to stay on safeties real quick before we move off them. One guy I really liked, but I'm just not sure he's a fit for the Redskins, is Taylor Rapp with Washington. I think he may have more talent than any of these guys. But the problem is he really strikes me as because of his athletic profile, is really and truly more of a Landon Collins type than anything. So I'm not sure he's a real fit for us.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think he might have a little bit more range than Collins and could be used back there, but I just think he does make more sense to be more of a primary, in the box safety. Not that he has to only do that, but I agree with that. Like, I like Taylor Rapp. I don't think he's as much of a pinpoint positional fit. Like, if they end up with Taylor Rapp, I think that's a fine pick, but I don't think he's as perfect of a fit, even though I agree he's a better safety than, say, Savage or Thornhill or Adderley. I actually am a pretty big fan, but I think those guys just fit the absolute need of the Redskins as a rangy free safety better.
Hey, Shoup, give me somebody you've been scouting, because you watch a lot of these guys, way more than any of us ever could. So give me a name of somebody who you think they probably won't go in the first 3 rounds, but if a team comes away with this guy, it's going to be, they've basically, a sleeper. Give me someone who, the Redskins could find maybe in the 5th round that would wind up a starter.
Ooh,
that's not a narrow question, Alex.
Well.
yeah. 5th round, specifically for the Redskins, there's some guys that come to mind at positions that probably aren't the Redskins' primary needs, but I'll give you a guard that I think might push 5th round, probably more 4th round. And actually, I'll give you 2 guards, and that's either Oklahoma guard Ben Powers or Drew Samia. I think they're both really good, and I think they get overlooked just because of how talented that Oklahoma offensive line is and how talented the quarterback play was. But I mean, that Oklahoma offensive line, they could have 4 guys drafted this year. They had Orlando Brown drafted last year. I mean, they're just stonewall guys. And both Powers and Samia were at the Senior Bowl. I thought they did very well, were impressive. I think in other years, I think they're 3rd-round talents. I think this year, because there's so many guards, there's just so many interior offensive linemen, I think they're sliding. And one might slide to the 5th round. I think probably late 4th round is kind of their targeted range. And then I'll give you one other guy who I think goes much later, and that's another guard, is Alex Bars from Notre Dame. Had he not gotten injured, I think he's easily a top 100 pick. He missed this entire past season, but this guy had played extremely well for Notre Dame, played a couple different positions on their offensive line, and, was off to a good start this year before he got injured. And I think from reports I've seen, he's healthy now and no lingering issues. And, I think he's now a day 3 pick because of it. So, he might go like 6th round, maybe even 7th round. And, again, just because it's a deep group. And so I'd say that is some sleeper guys for the Redskins. One guy, and maybe for the Redskins, I mean, I would love to see it happen, and no pun there, but Bryce Love, the running back, this was a guy who all throughout the process was considered 1 or 2 among running backs, and he had a down year, and then he blows out his knee in the last game of the year, and this is a guy who has really good speed. He could easily replace the Chris Thompson role on the Redskins or for any team. I don't think he's got, say, the upside of the Alvin Kamara, but he can do it all. He can catch passes. He can, if the speed comes back from the injury, I mean, he's going to be a weapon in this league, and he's probably going day 3 because you're drafting a guy who had an ACL, back in December. So, that's a sleeper guy who you probably need to put at least on the PUP list, if not IR, for the entire year. But that's going to be some big return on investment down the road. And from the Redskins' perspective, Pearson, I know, is a 2-year deal, but it's probably only going to be this year, assuming guys performs well. And then Chris Thompson, the Redskins need to make some decisions on going forward. So to tie into the Redskins, that would be a fine late-round pick for them to get some upside long term.
Okay, so and we're gonna have to wrap this up here, Steve. But if you're the GM of the Washington Redskins this year, who is your primary target in round 1? Give us a couple names.
Well, honestly, my primary target is Dwayne Haskins, and I would move up for him. I think the Redskins, I'm typically risk adverse, and trading up for a quarterback can be very risky. But I think this year, if Haskins is sliding, I mean, I'd like not to have to trade up to the Jets, take third position, which was rumored earlier this week. But if he starts sliding, I would go up and get him because they need a franchise quarterback. And the problem that the Redskins have is it's not easy to acquire one. And with their cap situation, even if one were to become available that you'd have to pay it, they really can't right now. You'd really have to backload that contract, which then causes all sorts of other problems down the road. And from a drafting perspective, people say, "Oh, wait till next year." The problem is you might not be able to. The thing is, the Redskins with McCoy, Keenum, the defense that they've had, if they had better health than last year, they're an 8-win team, 8-9-win team. And even with maybe a slight drop-off in quarterback play, they're probably a 7-8-win team again. With some health and a little luck, but that doesn't put you in a position to draft one of the top quarterbacks next year. And trading up for him might not be possible because, the top teams could all need quarterbacks. A couple of years ago, Chip Kelly really wanted to trade up for Marcus Mariota, but the Titans said, no, we need a quarterback. And, he offered multiple first-round picks and players, and they turned him down flat. So, it's not, you can't always trade up for a quarterback. And likely the price would be much higher to get up next year. So I would say if Haskins starts sliding, he's my number one priority because I just don't know when else they're going to be able to fix this position.
Mm. Interesting. Steve, it is always great to have you on the show. We love having you on before every draft. So, pencil us in at, 2020 draft time. We're going to be trying to call you again for sure.
Or maybe post-draft.
Yeah.
Figure out these players that we did get.
Well, that's not a bad idea too. We could definitely
better idea.
Set up something like that as well.
Don't push my guy off for a whole year, man.
But Steve Shoup from Fanspeak, if you aren't going to his site and drafting your mock drafts there, and it's a great way to figure out what talent is really there in the draft every year. That's actually how I kind of figure out who I want to see the Skins pick because I don't have time to watch college football all day. So. It's a great site for that. Steve Shoup, always great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Always fun.
All right. You have a good one. Guys, that was a good interview with Shoup. And you heard that chuckling because that is Sean, who I guess was out on a date having brunch or something while we were all recording that interview with Steve Shoup there.
Hello. Guilty as charged.
Guilty? What? Anything good?
Nothing good.
Nothing
a
good.
whole lot of trouble.
All right. Welcome to the show, Sean. How's it going?
Yeah, it's good. I'm sorry I missed the interview. It sounds like a great one, but I'm excited to hear your guys' thoughts on it. You gotta give me the headlines here, so I'm not out of the loop.
Well, the number one headline for me that he talked about was on quarterbacks. He's a big Dwayne Haskins guy.
Yeah.
He advocated that the Redskins trade up for Dwayne Haskins if they can.
Not to top five, but if he...
Yeah, he wasn't saying move up, crazy Looney Tunes like RG3 trade, but he was saying if you can move up a few spots to get him, they ought to do it. I like that. He had a bunch of down draft guard prospects when Jamal asked him about guards. I thought that was good.
I'm surprised how deep he thinks the guard class is, because I know there's a couple good ones.
He's not the only one who said that.
Yeah,
it's a deep guard class.
And some of these guys... These tackles can be converted to play inside too. So there's just so many, opportunities available at that position, in that interior line position too.
Yeah, it needs to be addressed. So
and he kind of poo-pooed all over DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
Which Metcalf's a guy who's the shiny new toy to a certain extent because he just blew away the combine and he looks like Batman and all that stuff. So I thought that was interesting. I mean, the man looks like Batman, in terms of physique. My goodness, I don't mean like in the face, but I mean his physique.
He doesn't have giant pointy ears.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
You can put the pointy ears on him though.
Yes.
You can do that. In safeties, I'm glad to see I'm not totally off base with the safety thing. He talked about the need for a rangy free safety.
Yeah.
I know a lot of you guys out there are Maryland fans. You mentioned Darnell Savage. Darnell Savage is a playmaker extraordinaire.
Is he the one with 6 picks or something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's a real gambling ball hawk type.
Yeah.
And so if you pick him, he's gonna blow some coverages, sometimes, but the opportunity to have him be a playmaker is bold. So if you can pick him up in the mid round somewhere, it may be worthwhile.
Who was that safety from Fresno State that we drafted a few years back, like in 2013?
Rambo?
No. That he led the nation in interceptions that year.
I'm pretty sure that was Bakari Rambo.
No, Bakari didn't go to Fresno. He went to, I don't even remember where he went.
Keep talking, I will figure it out.
He injured his foot. He had the foot injury. And it prevented him from. Oh my goodness, I gotta look.
I'm looking it up. Keep talking, Jamal.
I'm struggling because it's getting on my nerves because I just randomly thought about him and how he was a playmaker in college. But
right.
For whatever reason,
I remember what you're talking about because it was that same draft where we did draft Bakari Rambo. We drafted two safeties. One of them was a big playmaker, and it just didn't work, right?
Because we got Emerson. I think we got Emerson in the same draft too. Bakari Rambo. We loaded up on the defensive playmakers.
Was the name? But
Thomas.
You're talking about Philip Thomas.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, Philip Thomas. Good Lord. I don't understand.
Steve's cousin, Philip.
I don't understand. So. And this is just a general observation based on the remarks from Steve. Steve Thomas. I think it's kind of weird in the sense, are we really going to chase, the playmakers? Like, literally, they had hell of a season or maybe a hell of a 2 seasons. I don't know anything like that. Like, they strictly had playmaker potential in the pro. I mean, in the collegiate level, but. Does their skill translate to the pros, or is it something like they made these turnovers by circumstance? Like they just happened to be in the area and it was a bad pass, or they just happened to be where the ball was, but it's not like they made the play. The opportunity just was there. Like,
well, I mean, in the case of Savage is a legit route running ball hawk.
Okay.
He's going to jump the routes, and he's going to blow some coverages because of that. Some of these other guys, yes. I mean, I brought up, Steve Shoup kind of glossed over Deontay Thompson, who I put as number 1 on my safety board, mainly because he's from Alabama. But Deontay didn't participate in the combine or the pro day, and so
that's rare that anybody doesn't either.
Well, it was because he was recovered from an injury.
Oh, okay.
And that's why he didn't do either. But he's a guy who, I mean, you have to think the Redskins are hot over, but there's questions about it. Yeah, but there's questions about his athleticism and whatnot. I mean, they really need to focus on rangy free safeties, and the ball hawking thing is great, but they really need a rangy coverage guy.
I actually think Savage is an interesting one because I kind of looked at him as more of that money backer type player.
Well, he's not big enough for that. I mean, he's a thin dude. He's not.
Yeah,
he's not. I know you're fascinated with money backers and that you like saying it every time you get a chance.
I actually hate the nickname money backer, but I'm fascinated with the use of a guy like that. Yes.
I don't think that's his destiny, just because of his body type. Alex or Sean, what do you think, man? You've heard the Steve Shoup interview.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, I'm just enjoying listening to you guys give me the headlines on it. This is good. You guys are my draft experts. But no, I mean, I agree with all the general thoughts we're giving. Rangy free safety, it sounds good. This is the year for deep draft prospects. That sounds fantastic. We need it. I've got nothing to add to that.
The only thing we didn't talk to him enough about, in my opinion, was the edge rusher thing. I brought up one guy, but we didn't really cover more of them. Like guard, it's just a really deep class for that kind of thing. So even though I would love to get Montez Sweat in the first round, I'm sure most Redskins fans would, you could probably find a starter in the 3rd round, if not later.
I mean, and listen, they need a starter.
Yeah.
There's no doubt they need a starter. With the departure of Preston Smith, and I'm not that brokenhearted over Preston leaving, frankly.
But it was a body.
He's a warm body. So I mean, Brian Burns. If Josh Allen for some reason fell, I don't think he will.
No.
But
can we have that many Allens on the defensive line at the same time?
We'll find out.
We could.
Yeah,
we could. I think it's the one thing that is a guarantee to me is they will draft. I think you can book the Redskins drafting an edge rusher
somewhere.
They have to have an edge rusher. Yeah. So I think one of those top 4 picks in rounds 1, 2, and 3 are going to be edge rushers. There's almost no doubt in my view.
Oh yeah, mine too. And I'm just saying, I think you could get somebody with that number 96 pick, and he'll be a starter.
Yeah, particularly since we have no one.
Yeah.
But Steve wasn't prioritizing edge rushers in this interview. Is that right?
No, I asked him at the very last question, Sean. I asked him, okay, if you're the Redskins, what are you doing? And he said, get Dwayne Haskins.
Okay.
Yeah, he's
all right.
He's in that old school, you need a quarterback mentality.
I'm right there with him. I agree wholeheartedly with that.
All right, not believers in our new blood, huh? Quarterback. Not believers in him?
Nope.
Fair enough. All right, well, if that's all we got for the interview, what else? You guys got any big thoughts about the interview? I know we had some other stuff we were going to talk about.
Are you moving us on, Sean?
Oh, not necessarily. Hey, I missed the whole interview. You guys are in the driver's seat on this one.
I mean, we're going to talk a lot more about draft. Fanspeak is fascinating to me because, this is a guy. He formed this site. He and his sister just out of a basic love for sports, and he's not a football guy. He's not a college football player or anything. He's just a guy like us.
Super
and
fan.
and he parlayed all of that into a career. And you guys heard he was down at the Senior Bowl. He's credentialed media. He's got a very popular site. I really admire that.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple concept for a website, too, and yet so valuable. If you're a fan of football, I'm surprised he hasn't expanded into other sports, but I guess, baseball, like, no one really cares about the draft.
No, but basketball they do.
Yeah, basketball.
Yeah, draft for NBA, NFL.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
If somebody out there who's a major network wants a quality Redskins site, I can name some. If they want to buy some sites out, I can come up with a name or two for them.
Sure,
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, it's amazing. I don't know. He's testament to the fact that sometimes if you want something, you just got to start doing it. And you know what, fellas? That's what we're doing, too. So I think we're doing all right.
In our own little weird way, yes.
Yeah. But like Steve said, hey, anybody wants to pick us up, we're open for business.
NBC, CBS, we're right there for you.
Yep.
Give us a call. Guaranteed to be available. All right. Cool. Well, let's talk about some other stuff then. I know we had some Eric Flowers stuff, obviously, in the news. That's going to be an interesting one to talk about. So what's the deal with that? We have a new signing, guys. How are we feeling?
I feel pretty freaking terrible about it, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Terrible? Now why? I can't even delineate that thought, that feeling, Steve. Explain.
Well, because Eric Flowers is a busted first-round draft pick tackle.
Potentially the biggest bust, right? This is what people say.
Yeah, he's a huge bust. Now, what do we have on this team that are making a lot of money? We've got two tackles making a ton of money already.
Yep.
And we drafted a third-round pick last year who's theoretically the future at swing tackle.
Right. If not, I assume you also draft a guy like that thinking maybe he could start someday.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, and down the road. So what exactly are we doing with Eric Flowers? Because we paid him $3.25 million. Here's the contract: $3.25 million. He got $1.5 million guaranteed.
So you don't really cut him with that.
Well, yeah, I mean you can, but you're gonna lose. It's a pretty big dead cap hit if you do.
Right.
So his cap hit he's got a $3.2 million cap hit. And $1.5 million dead cap. So he's not just a camp body. What are you doing with this guy? Are you going to transition him to guard? Okay. And I know there's some O-line gurus out there, that think he can maybe do it. And, part of what I understand, O-line expert, as we know, but one of the things that he really has trouble with is edge rushers. And he's just not,
right.
He doesn't have the lateral agility for it. And if you put him kind of in the phone booth, so to speak, at guard, maybe he can be better. But, okay, I can accept that. Why do we think Eric Flowers is the guy? Why Eric Flowers to do that? Of all the people, there's guards out there to sign. Why? What on earth is?
Yeah, there were plenty of guys we could have signed for $3 million who would have been already guards and decent.
Yeah. I think personally, I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't go out on a limb for most things because I just like to see how things unfold. But I've seen Eric Flowers play since 2015. It's safe to say he sucks. I don't know why. I don't know why they did that.
Well said.
I don't know. I have absolutely no clue. But and on top of that, it's the fact that you've seen him for 4 years. You've seen him play for 4 years. He played against you guys twice.
Yeah, so you've seen him play 8 times.
You've seen him play 8 times just between y'all two. And then you've seen him play against other teams as you do film work on the Giants offense. And then you said after he got done with the Jaguars that we should bring him in and sign him to our roster. I don't understand what they saw. So it has to be something where they seen the potential of what he can do on the inside if they get some proper tutelage with Callahan. I don't agree with it. I don't see it. So if I'm wrong, you can bring this clip up. That's cool with me.
But some people will do that, by the way.
Yeah,
they've done that to us before.
But this guy sucks.
I mean, the only counter argument, and I'm not even saying I agree with this, I'm just going to put it out there, is like the counterpoint would be he played with the Giants, who've been a mess of a coaching staff for the last couple of years. Eli is a just stand here and take a sack kind of quarterback. He doesn't move around. He just holds on to the ball until Odell gets open and then tries throwing it. So
not anymore.
Not anymore, but that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
So Eli took a number of sacks because of how he plays. So you could make the argument that he might be a rough O-lineman on a team that was not built for O-linemen to succeed. But
Except that he sucks at playing O-line.
Yeah, I overall agree with that. I'm just saying maybe this is what they're thinking.
I don't mind bringing a guy like this in as like a camp body for a minimum contract. I mean, I'd be, okay.
Yeah, if we sign him for $1 million, sure. Don't care.
Anybody for that. But I mean, we're paying him $1.5 million guaranteed dollars. It's just, what are you guys thinking?
We just want the Giants playbook. Maybe that's the goal here. Is we're trying to get. It sounds like the kind of guy who'd give all the secrets. If you listen to what Eric Flowers says, sounds like a real.
Can't we hire WikiLeaks or somebody to go break into their playbook for easier than signing Eric Flowers?
Just wait for someone to put it in the dumpster like our team did a couple years ago. Yeah. No, I don't know. I agree with everything you guys have said. This is a strange one. I mean, the only thing you could say is we've lost so much depth. Scherf went down for half the frickin' season. This could be just an attempt to get someone with a couple years playing experience that can hold it down in a pinch. I mean, I guess we can. I paying a little bit more than that would say, but that's the only thing I can think of.
But that's kind of like the Mark Sanchez of O-lineman situation already, is what you're talking about.
It's a pretty damn good analogy.
By the way, mention, speaking of signing guys like this, did we all see? I know this wasn't on the agenda, but I got to bring it up. Doug Williams' quote this week.
Yeah.
We all love Doug, because he's the Super Bowl champion and all of that, first black quarterback. I mean, all that stuff is great. But this man went on.
I don't remember what network it was.
Yeah, I don't remember. But he says, well, I don't know anything about the scheme. I just draft the players. Now, you're the GM.
Right.
Okay, and you're picking the players in the sort of concept to say, well, we want to bring in talent. I completely agree with you. And sometimes, if the player's talented enough, fine, bring him in. But isn't the entire job of the GM to marry the players that would best fit the coach and what the team is trying to do on a macro level is kind of important. And so the idea of the GM saying, I don't know anything about the scheme, particularly when you are a former NFL quarterback, makes Doug sound freaking ignorant. I'm sorry.
It sounds like a blow-off answer. I don't think that's a legitimate answer. I think he's just blowing off the question is what that is.
I hope so.
Yeah. It blew up with the fan base, that's for sure. And I don't care how beloved you are. Something like that is still going to upset a good number of fans.
And I can understand it. I can understand why people would listen to that and be like, what the hell? But at the same time, it just sounds to me like he's not being totally honest about that, and he's just trying to get through the question. That's what that sounds like to me. Yeah, exactly. I just refuse to believe that Doug Williams, of all people, would really say that. It doesn't matter who we get. It doesn't matter what the scheme is. I have a hard time understanding that, believing that.
I was going to say, I want to say I heard it, but I'm not sure I heard Doug speak on it. I've heard him speak on a few occasions, so I may be mixing up my interviews with him. But I was just going to simply say it may depend on the tone in terms of what Sean said. He may just be blowing off the question or something like that. I don't know. But I have read the quotes, that's for sure. It didn't sound good. Like it's one thing to understand, just acquiring talent is something essential to a team, but it also is something where you have to know, like, what does this guy do well, and how would it benefit the defense, or how would it benefit the offense? So just to completely disregard that, you don't pay attention to scheme. That's just, I think he either exaggerated or he completely jumped the gun. Speaking of it.
Well, and the thing about Doug, I think, is clearly he does understand the scheme, okay? He doesn't not know the scheme. Doug knows 1,000 times more football than all of us put together ever will. Doug does understand what Jay Gruden is trying to do. And you could argue that Jay has been a bit all over the place, year to year with the particularly the offensive scheme and whatnot. But if anybody understands it, it's Doug Williams. So I think part of it, Doug, as much as we love him, and as much as, he never needs to buy a drink in D.C. ever again, he's not well-spoken.
Mm-hmm.
And he's bungled things before, with the Reuben Foster apology, for example. And yes, he shouldn't have been the one to apologize and blah, blah, blah. But, it didn't come out well. And this may just be one of these things that kind of came out badly. And what he was trying to say is, I'm focused on acquiring talent, and it just kind of came out poorly. I hope to think it's that rather than the alternative. But I will say this. One of the things that Jay said could improve, if you go back to Jay's post-season wrap-up press conference, somebody asked him what can improve, and what he said was coach front office communication. Jay brought that up out of the blue, and this coupled with Doug's comments, maybe there is a disconnect.
Yeah. It would not stretch my imagination to think there was. How many times have we heard about weird communication problems with GMs?
You mean there's
with
dysfunction in the Redskins front office?
Yeah, right.
What?
Everything from that to
the sun rose this morning too.
Yeah, everything from that to playing, calling the plays on the field. Everything has been poor communication with this team in the Jay Gruden era. So
Doug
you're right.
Because Doug said, "I don't do scheme. I don't know the scheme." Doug does know the scheme very well.
Now,
clearly he does.
To balance that out, though, this coaching staff has done a very good job of adjusting to players. So, there is that factor to it where, he doesn't need to worry about it because he can trust Jay to figure out what to do with the wide receiver. I don't know about the defensive staff. If anything, the defense that's always been the Achilles heel. But
of course, on the heels of Doug's comments came Eric Flowers.
Right.
So
there's that too. The other thing that happened that I thought was interesting is all the prospects the Redskins were listed as scouting this week. I don't know if you saw, but the entire scouting department was in Missouri scouting Drew Lock, and Jay Gruden was wandering through West Virginia to hang out with Will Greer and eat sushi in West Virginia, which sounds awful.
Sushi anywhere sounds awful, first of all. I don't know about you guys, but
I'm a big sushi guy, so you blasphemer.
If anybody ever invites me to their house, don't bring sushi. You don't eat
sushi at home. You eat at a restaurant.
Don't take me to a sushi restaurant because I'm going to go through the McDonald's drive-thru afterwards. I have done that before. Okay?
Oh my goodness!
Sushi is delicious and it's full of omega-3.
And if
there's chose Wendy's or Chick-fil-A.
If there's anything I am, it's very blunt about everything, and I'm just probably going to tell you that I don't eat sushi. So do that. But
you live in Texas, that's fine.
Houston's got more cultured restaurants than you might think.
No, I know it does. It's the restaurant capital of America these days, but I don't think of Texas as sushi capital of America.
Yeah, probably. It's certainly not mine. Again, I'd rather do McDonald's. But yeah, Will Greer. I don't think Will Greer is even worth a sushi meal personally. Will Greer is the one they need to take through the drive-thru at McDonald's.
Ouch!
Not spend money on sushi. I think.
What's Drew Lock's projected draft position here?
Well, it depends on who you ask. We asked Steve that, and Steve went on and on about him, Steve Shoup, in this very episode, and indicated that somebody's probably going to jump up in round one and draft Drew Lock. He said that Drew's sort of the top of the second tier, which is fair enough. I think Drew, if he was drafted appropriately, may be a top of the second round guy.
Sure. All right, fair enough. I got to ask you guys, this is interesting. We've had a couple signings that have made splashes. We had Keenan, we had Collins, we've got Eric Flowers. I got to ask you guys, temperature check on the offseason. What grade are you giving the Redskins right now so far? Everything considered.
Everything considered, I'm probably going to C-.
C-. Ouch. C from Jamal? Was that you, Jamal?
Yeah, that was me. I got a C for him.
I'm going to give him a B-, and the reason is I think Keenum's about the best they could realistically do at quarterback.
But you hate it.
I don't hate it. I don't hate Keenum. I know what Keenum is. He's an average starter that had one extraordinary year thanks to Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen in a running game. I know exactly what Case Keenum is, but they had to get somebody like Case Keenum And they did that. They brought in Landon Collins, who's a great signing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I give them credit for that. It's not a wow, A+ offseason. But quite frankly, somebody name me the last time that a team won the offseason and really became a great team as a result of it. Somebody
last year with the Browns, maybe?
The Rams made it to the Super Bowl. That's about it.
Even though they shouldn't have.
In recent, they shouldn't have. I completely agree.
But the point is,
they made it to the NFC Championship still.
Okay, I'll give you the Rams. But point is, it's pretty rare that teams win. The Redskins have won the offseason many times.
The Eagles,
right.
2017?
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue that they won it. I'm sitting here just thinking off the question.
Yeah.
The Eagles in 2017, they came up Alshon and LeGarrette. I think that was his first year.
They signed a couple big names that year.
Well, Ajayi was in the midseason, but a few guys.
And I get Foles. Was Foles brought back in by that point?
He might have been brought back in that year,
yeah. I think that was the year he was brought back too.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, there's a couple examples, but I still stand by the idea that it's more rare than not.
I agree. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen often.
So, I mean, the only ones I really question why, Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, but, I kind of wonder about that one. But at least he has some speed and he has a track record of performance. I get that. But Eric Flowers just blew my mind. It really, I just don't. Giving him that much guaranteed money, I don't understand. Help me, Doug. Yeah. Come on the Hog Sty and explain what you were thinking, please.
To me, the reason I'm going so low is you've done nothing to address receiver and really, in my mind, guard, which are arguably two of your biggest needs.
I think the Redskins are just decided they can literally put a traffic cone in at left guard and
they seem to think that, yet 2 years have shown us that is incorrect.
They just don't care. Look, the team just doesn't value the position. They don't care. If they valued it, they would have done something about it by now. They just don't value left guard.
I understand that. I'm just saying it's wrong.
I agree completely. Let's have a guard out there who's not a traffic cone.
Right.
See how it goes.
Would be nice. Maybe we'd have 2 less broken legs.
See, there's a good point.
Just throwing that out there. All right, cool. Well, you know what? I'm just going to throw in here. I'm sitting at a C+. Good draft could bring that up to B level. I think it's, there's hope. What else, guys? Any other major things from this week? Any other major thoughts about Steve Shoup? Any other major things we want to talk about?
No, but we're going to have some more guests here coming up in the next couple shows, some more good draft stuff.
Hell yeah.
So, we've got, I don't know if we want to say it now, but we've got some good draft analysts coming up as guests. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Stay tuned for that.
Let's hold that off for the weekday.
Yep.
Yeah.
When is the draft this year? It's the 25th.
I think we got
25th? Okay. So we got a couple weeks left.
25th, 26th, and 27th.
And by the way, guys, I'd like everybody out there to give me a little bit of sympathy because, see, last year, the reason why we were able to respond so fast with the analysis of every pick as it came, we had them up there within minutes. The reason is I wrote 20 of them ahead of time, and we had them done. This year, there are so many directions the Redskins can go. Either I'm just going to say rest in peace to my free time and have to write up all of them, or we're just going to have to wait. Yeah. So I haven't quite decided what to do, but I think the draft week is going to stink for me either way as a result.
Well, it'll be fun for me, kind of, because the 25th is my wife's birthday, so,
Very nice.
Somebody asked me if we could organize a, draft get-together. I'm like, I don't think that she would appreciate me going out and getting drunk with a bunch of our, commenters on her birthday.
Tell her happy 17th birthday.
Yeah. We can invite her. She can come. She can come to the draft party.
I don't think she'd want to come to a draft party.
Fair enough. Women, am I right?
Right.
All right, fair enough. Well, we will let people go like Steve said. We got a couple weeks. We got 3-some weeks left to go. We've got tons of new content, draft-related, coming up in that time. So make sure you're sticking with us. And we will see you all next time, right here on the Hog Sty. Take care.
Peace.